They always say Christmas is about love, family, and home. Togetherness, laughter around the table. Memories pass like side dishes. But that night, as we sat in my dining room in Asheville, with the ham still steaming and the cranberry sauce untouched, my son Derek leaned back in his chair, lifted his wine glass, and said, "Maybe it's time Mom gives up the house. Move somewhere easier, for her age." The room went quiet for a second. Then Tamra, his wife, chuckled like he'd just said something clever. Her parents, visiting from out of state, let out polite laughs. Even Jonas, my grandson, smiled nervously and looked down at his plate. I didn't laugh. I just stared at my napkin, folding and unfolding the corner, trying to keep my face from cracking. It wasn't what Derek said. It was how easily it rolled off his tongue. How natural it felt to say it in front of everyone. Like it was harmless. Like I wasn't sitting right there. But what cut deeper, what made my chest feel hollow, was that everyone laughed. Not just Derek. All of them. Like I was some old dog who didn't know when to lie down. Like I was the joke. Like 35 years in this house meant nothing. And that's when I felt it again. That familiar ache in my chest. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just that slow, cold realization that you've become invisible in a place you built with your own hands. This story isn't about rage. This isn't one of those yelling, slamming doors kind of tales. No, this is a story about what happens when people stop seeing you, when they rewrite your role from mother to burden and expect you to accept it with a smile. I didn't say anything at the table. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I quietly excused myself and walked to the kitchen. I stood by the sink, my hands gripping the edge, and I just breathed. Slow, careful, like if I didn't hold myself still, I might crack right in half. But if anyone wants to understand what really happened that night, if they want to know why I didn't fall apart when Derek said what he said, why I stood up instead, they'd need to know what happened 5 years ago. Back when everything I worked for was nearly taken from me. Not with force, not with threats, but with smiles and contracts, with helpful suggestions and just temporary fixes. That's where this story really starts. 5 years ago, I still felt like myself. I still walked this house like I owned it because I did. I still hosted Sunday dinners, still planted tomatoes in the backyard, still listened to old records on the player Richard left behind when he passed. This house, this life, it was mine. But life has a way of shifting under you when you're not looking. And sometimes the people you love most are the ones holding the shovel. The Christmas ham that year was good. By the way, I glazed it with orange juice and brown sugar, just like Richard liked it. But it tasted like paper in my mouth. Because once someone tells you, joking or not, that you don't belong in your own home, nothing tastes right after that. I cleaned the table alone that night. I told everyone to go relax, that I needed a minute. And I did. I needed to remember who I was. And I needed to pull out that envelope I'd tucked away months ago, labeled "in case," because I had known this day would come. Maybe not on Christmas. Maybe not with wine glasses clinking and polite laughter. But I knew. I always knew. And if you're still with me, if you're someone who's ever sat at your own dinner table and felt like a stranger in your own story, then you'll understand why I didn't just leave that night. Why I didn't pack a bag or go quietly. This wasn't about comfort or revenge. It was about remembering, about reclaiming. And it started 5 years ago, back when the flood came, back when I almost lost my house, my voice, and everything that had ever felt like home. And just like that, like the first slow crack in old plaster, everything began to shift. But I didn't see it yet. Not then. 5 years earlier, the sky opened up and dumped more water than I'd ever seen on Asheville. It rained for 3 days straight. The creek behind my backyard, the one Richard used to say never gets more than a trickle, turned into a brown, angry river. By the second night, water had already seeped into the basement. I tried to stay calm. I stacked towels. I moved what I could, but on the third morning, I woke up to find water halfway up the steps. My basement was completely under, and it had crept into the kitchen. I stood there in my nightgown, feet soaked, staring at the fridge, humming away like nothing was wrong. I had just gotten out of surgery 3 weeks before that. My right knee, it still ached when the weather turned. I wasn't moving fast. I wasn't strong enough to carry furniture or boxes. I felt helpless, and I hated it. The insurance guy came 2 days later. He clicked his pen a lot, took pictures with his phone, and shook his head the whole time. "Mrs. Mack, this is going to be tough," he said, like I didn't already know. I got the letter a week after that. Due to the nature of the damage and your policy coverage limits, basically, they weren't going to pay for much. A little mold cleanup, a portion of the floor replacement, nothing else. I cried in the bathtub that night, not loud, just quietly, like someone who knew no one was coming to help. That's when Derek showed up. Tamra was with him, holding a clipboard. They were upbeat. That's what threw me. "Mom," Derek said, "we can help. Seriously." Tamra started explaining how Derek had a small renovation business, how he had connections with local grant programs for disaster relief, but that the house had to be listed under his business temporarily. "It's all paperwork," she said, "just so we can file the applications on your behalf. It's not permanent." I looked at Derek, my only child, the boy I raised, the boy who used to leave dandelions on my pillow and sign them for the Queen. "You trust me, right?" he asked. Of course I did. I didn't even think twice. We sat at the dining table. I signed where Tamra pointed. I didn't read every word. I should have, but my hands were tired and my knee was sore, and they were smiling so kindly. The next few weeks, the house buzzed with noise, contractors coming in, floors being ripped out, drywall replaced. I tried to stay out of the way. Jonas, my grandson, was 15 then, still a sweet boy, still called me Graham in that half-laughing way of his. He'd come over after school, help me go through old boxes from the basement, carry things up the stairs for me. We'd sit in the garage together, sometimes sorting through photo albums and old Christmas decorations. He'd ask me questions about when his dad was little or why Grandpa always wore 2 watches. Those afternoons saved me. They reminded me I wasn't just some old woman in a house falling apart. I was still someone who knew stories, who mattered. The work dragged on. Every time I asked about progress, Derek would say, "We're getting there," or "just waiting on city paperwork." Tamra stopped updating me altogether. I didn't push. I figured maybe I was just old-fashioned. Maybe these things took longer now. I didn't realize that while I was watching the drywall go up, something more important had gone missing. One afternoon, I went to pay the gas bill online and couldn't get in. The account had been switched. My name was gone from the login. I called Derek. He said not to worry. He was consolidating everything to make it easier. Said he'd put me on an allowance to take the pressure off. His words, an allowance. It didn't sit right, but I didn't say much. My knee still ached. I still had paperwork from the hospital to deal with. And truthfully, I was tired. Not just body tired, soul tired. But Jonas kept me steady. He still came by, still helped, still sat with me, while we drank lemonade out of mismatched mugs. "Your house is looking good, Graham," he said one afternoon. I smiled, but something in me sank. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Not the way it used to. My rocking chair had been moved. My kitchen drawers were rearranged. My books were in bins under the stairs. Everything felt borrowed, but I brushed it off. Told myself not to be dramatic. That was the beginning. The moment I gave up that signature, thinking it was just a formality, was the moment I stopped being the owner of this house. But I didn't understand it yet. Not then. All I knew was that things were changing, and not in the way I thought they would. The repairs moved slower than anyone expected. At least, that's what Derek kept telling me. Supplies are delayed. Contractors are booked. It's a process, Mom. I stopped asking after a while. Every time I brought it up, Tamra would sigh like I was being difficult. So I let it go. I figured things would smooth out in time. But what I didn't expect was how many changes started happening that had nothing to do with the damage from the flood. It began small. Tamra replaced the curtains in the living room, said the old ones were too dark. I came home from a doctor's appointment, and they were gone. My lace ones, the ones I made with my neighbor back when we used to do sewing swaps, folded in a plastic tub in the garage. Next it was the dishes. My floral plates, the ones Richard and I picked out at the old Sears downtown, were replaced with a plain gray set. She said it was more modern. I found mine stacked under the sink next to the mop. Then one afternoon, Derek asked if I'd mind moving into the guest room. Just for a bit, he said, claimed it'd help them better coordinate with workers since they were handling everything. It's just easier this way, he said, putting his arm around my shoulder like it was nothing. I nodded. They moved my clothes into the smaller bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with no sunlight and that old radiator that clicks in the middle of the night. I told myself it was temporary, that once the repairs were done, everything would go back to normal. That family helps family. Still, I couldn't help but feel something was off. Tamra started talking to me like I was company, not rude, just distant, always polite, never warm. She'd say things like, "Oh, we just finished dinner," instead of asking if I wanted a plate, or "Let us know if you need anything," like I wasn't already in the house. They started leaving me out of decisions. Furniture I didn't recognize showed up in the living room. My old coffee table disappeared. I asked Derek about it, and he said Tamra gave it to Goodwill. It had a chip in the leg, he said, not even looking up from his phone. I felt my stomach twist, but I didn't argue. It was just a table. That's what I told myself. Just a thing. Still, every piece they moved out, every photo they didn't hang back up, it felt like another part of me was being packed away. The worst part wasn't the changes. It was the silence. No one asked me if I was okay with anything. They just did it, one decision at a time, until I started feeling like a tenant in the home I'd owned for over 30 years. Then one morning, I heard Tamra on the phone. She was in the hallway outside the laundry room, talking quietly but not quietly enough. "She's just stuck in her ways," she said. "I mean, she's not mean, just hard to live with sometimes." I was folding dish towels at the kitchen table. My hands went still. Hard to live with. I stared at the towel in my lap and swallowed down the burn behind my eyes. I didn't say anything. I didn't walk out and confront her. I just kept folding. Later that night, I sat in the guest room, lights dim, listening to the hum of the house I no longer recognized. It felt colder, even though the thermostat said 70. Jonas knocked on the door, like he always did. 3 soft taps. Then his face peeked in. "Hey, Graham," he said. "You okay?" I smiled. "Come in, sweetheart." He sat on the edge of the bed and asked if I remembered how to make that cheesy chicken bake I used to fix on Sundays. Said Tamra tried to make it once, but it came out watery. We laughed a little. Then we talked about his school project on Civil War letters and how he was thinking about applying to Appalachian State when the time came. I told him about the old photo albums in the garage and how his grandpa used to take notes on the back of pictures. He said, "You should write all this down sometime." And that Those moments were the only thing that kept me grounded. Jonas still saw me, still wanted to talk to me like I mattered. He didn't treat me like background noise. When he left the room, I sat there for a long time, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. I could hear Tamra and Derek talking in low voices in the kitchen. Something about grocery budgets. Something about a new sofa. I leaned back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling that once held glow-in-the-dark stars when Derek was a kid. We used to lie on the floor and make shapes out of them. He'd say, "That one's the Big Dipper. That one's you, Mama." And now I was in the smallest room in my own house, trying not to take up too much space. I still believed they were trying to help. I still believed this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I felt something shifting. Not in the walls or the furniture. In me. It started with an envelope that didn't look like junk mail. The logo said Hickory Pine Realty, and inside was a thank you note for my listing inquiry. It mentioned interest in my home, gave a number to call if I had any questions, and even listed an estimated value range based on recent comps in the neighborhood. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they sent it to the wrong person, but the name at the top was mine, and the address was definitely this house. I walked into the kitchen and set it on the counter. Later that evening, while Derek was pouring himself a glass of iced tea, I slid the paper toward him. This came today. Something about a listing. He didn't even look up, just sipped his tea and said, "Oh, yeah, it's just some refinancing paperwork I had to submit for the grant stuff. They send those out automatically, even with my name on it." I asked, "It's just paperwork, Mom. Don't worry about it." He smiled like it was no big deal and walked off to the den. But I did worry. Something about the way he dismissed it. So casual. So sure I wouldn't press further. It made my gut twist. A week after that, the water bill came addressed to Tamra. Then the gas bill. Then the trash service. Every account I'd opened in my name, some dating back 20 years, was now under hers. No explanation. No request, just switched like I'd been taken off the team. I asked about that, too. "Tamra's handling the budgeting now," Derek said. "We're trying to simplify things." I almost asked what we meant, but I bit my tongue. Again, then came the keypad lock. One afternoon, I came home from the pharmacy and saw a handyman standing outside the main bedroom, my bedroom drilling into the door frame. Derek was watching. "What's going on?" I asked. He glanced over, shrugged. "Just putting in a lock. You know, for safety. We've got equipment in there." "Since when is that your room?" Tamra walked by and said, "It's just for now, Cynthia. We need the space while the rest of the house is being organized. You've still got your room." My room. The one down the hall with no closet space, where the radiator clicked like a metronome every night. I stared at the keypad. Coal black, blinking red. I didn't say anything. What could I say? Tamra had started dropping little hints by then. While washing dishes, she'd mention how nice her aunt's retirement community was. You get your own apartment, meals 3 times a day, even bingo on Thursdays. I laughed the first time. Then she brought it up again. "Ever think about something like that? I mean, you deserve rest." She always said it with a smile, like it was a compliment, like getting me out of the house was some kind of gift. Jonas noticed the shift. He wasn't saying much, but I saw it in his face. The way he'd look at me across the table when Tamra said something slick. The way he lingered near me after dinner while the rest of them wandered off. One evening, while we were folding laundry together, he asked, "Are you okay, Graham?" I nodded, just tired. "You don't look like yourself lately." I didn't know how to answer that, because the truth was I didn't feel like myself. I started keeping a notebook. Nothing dramatic, just a little spiral pad I kept in the drawer with my vitamins. I wrote down every bill that came in, who it was addressed to, what changed, and when. I noted the date that lock was installed. I listed what furniture disappeared, what accounts were no longer under my name. Every small shift that seemed innocent if you looked at it alone, but together told a different story. I wasn't planning anything. Not yet. I just needed to see it for myself, to confirm I wasn't imagining it. Because that's the hard part. When people change the rules slowly, piece by piece, it's easy to think you're overreacting. That maybe it's your memory, your age. Maybe you're being set in your ways, like Tamra said. But I knew better. I may have been quiet, but I wasn't blind. And I wasn't confused. That house still had my name on the front mailbox. I still knew where every floorboard creaked, where the best sunlight hit the window at 3 p.m., where I kept the cinnamon behind the baking powder even though Tamra had moved everything around. I still knew the story of every corner. They just didn't think that mattered anymore. But I was watching. I was writing. I was preparing, quietly, because when someone tries to push you out of the life you built, sometimes the only way to hold on is to sit still and pay attention. And that's exactly what I did. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because I was up early trying to print out a recipe for zucchini bread. The internet had been spotty all week, and Tamra had told me to use the upstairs printer instead. I walked into the office, what used to be Richard's study, and right there on the tray was a stack of papers. I wasn't snooping. I was just looking for a clean sheet, but the top page caught my eye. Offer of sale agreement. The name of the buyer was typed in bold, along with the address of my house. I picked it up. My hand shook a little, but I kept reading. There were numbers, a proposed closing date, legal terms I didn't fully understand, but one sentence stopped me cold. The property, currently held under Derek Mack Holdings, LLC, to be transferred upon agreed final terms. I sat down. I must have stared at that paper for 5 minutes, reading it again and again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But no matter how many times I blinked, the words didn't change. They were trying to sell the house. No warning, no conversation, nothing. All those little signs, Tamra's remarks, the bills, the keypad lock, they weren't just annoyances. They were groundwork. I thought I might throw up. I thought I might scream. But instead, I folded the paper carefully, slid it into the inside pocket of my cardigan, and walked back to my room. I didn't say a word to Derek or Tamra. Not yet. I didn't trust myself not to explode. And I wasn't about to hand them the reaction they were probably expecting. That night, I went into the garage and dug through an old file box. It smelled like mildew and dust, but I found what I was looking for, an address book with a green vinyl cover, the kind no one uses anymore. I flipped through the pages until I saw his name, Martin Keene. He was an old friend of Richard's. They played cards together back in the day, and Martin had helped with our wills years ago. I hadn't seen him since the funeral, but I remembered him being kind, direct, and sharp as a tack, even at 70-something. I called him the next morning. Cynthia Mack. He said, "Well, how are you?" "I've had better weeks." I replied. I asked if we could meet. Just talk. We sat in his office 2 days later, a quiet little space above a sandwich shop downtown. He wore the same brown corduroy jacket he always did and had coffee ready when I arrived. I handed him the paper. He read it slowly, then leaned back in his chair and looked at me over his glasses. "Cynthia, did you sign the deed over?" I told him everything about the flood, the grant application, the paperwork Tamra had me sign, how they said it was temporary, how I never intended to give up ownership. He nodded, listening carefully. After a long pause, he said, "Here's the truth. Legally, it looks like you did sign it over. The LLC is real, the transfer is recorded, and your name is off the property title." I sat very still. It felt like my chest caved in. So I have no say? I asked. Not on your own. No. I blinked back tears and stared at the wall. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to think. But he continued, you said Jonas is a co-signer on the LLC? I nodded. Well, Martin said, if Jonas is listed as a managing partner, and if he's willing to challenge the sale and help reassign the deed, there's a legal path. Not easy, but possible. It felt like someone cracked a window in a room I thought was sealed shut. He'd have to act, Martin added. He'd have to speak up. He's an adult now, right? He's 20, just started working part-time, still in school. Then talk to him, and soon. This offer isn't just a draft. It's a sign they're getting close. I left Martin's office with a folder of documents and a brain full of questions. What would Jonas say? Would he feel trapped between his parents and me? I didn't sleep much that night. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about Richard. What he'd say if he saw all this. He was always the calm one, always knew how to keep people honest. But he wasn't here anymore. It was on me now. The next afternoon, I asked Jonas if we could meet outside the house. Somewhere quiet. We sat on a bench in Carrier Park. I brought a thermos of coffee and the envelope with Martin's notes. I didn't waste time. They're selling the house, I said, without telling me. His eyes widened. What? Are you serious? I showed him the paper. I trusted them. I said, and they used my name like it didn't mean anything. He read every word. Then he looked at me and said, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want to drag you into it. You didn't drag me into anything, Graham. They did. I told him about the LLC, about how his name gave him power, and about what it would take to stop the sale. He didn't hesitate. I'll do whatever you need. And just like that, I felt something in me steady again. I wasn't alone. We had a long road ahead, but I had the one thing they didn't count on. A grandson who still knew who I was. And that changed everything. 2 days after that talk in the park, I called Jonas and asked if we could meet somewhere quiet. I chose the public library off Haywood. They had a little reading room with soft chairs, and nobody really bothered you there. He showed up right on time, carrying a notebook and a bottle of water, just like his grandpa used to do for meetings. I brought a folder. Inside were my notes, copies of the bills, the real estate letter, and the paperwork Martin had given me. I didn't make small talk. I laid the folder on the table and opened it between us. This is everything, I said. Jonas flipped through each sheet slowly. He didn't say much at first, just kept looking, flipping, rereading. Then he leaned back and looked at me like he was seeing me in a new light. Why didn't you tell me all this sooner? I didn't want to make it harder for you. I said, you're their son. You live in the middle of it. He shook his head. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how far it had gone. I've seen how they treat you, Graham. Like you're in the way. I never knew about the sale, though. That's different. I nodded. They didn't think I'd notice. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't know what to do even if I did. He looked at the documents again, then glanced around to make sure no one was listening. What do we do now? He asked. I talked to Martin. I told him. You remember him? Grandpa's friend. He's the one who helped with the wills years ago. Jonas nodded. He says we can file a new transfer. I said, one that moves the house from the LLC back to a rightful owner. But because your name's on the business, you have to sign off. You're the key. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed. So if I sign, we take control away from Dad. Not to hurt him, I said, to protect what's mine and what should someday be yours. He was quiet for a while. Then he said something that made my throat tighten. They forgot who this house belongs to, he said. But I remember. I grew up here. You raised me here. This place smells like your pancakes and that cinnamon candle you light in December. Not Dad's business meetings. Not Tamra's designer furniture. I didn't say anything, just reached out and touched his hand. That Saturday, we met Martin at his office. Jonas sat across from him, firm but calm. He asked questions, signed what needed signing, and didn't flinch. Martin looked at me as we stood up to leave and said, "He's a good one, Cynthia." I smiled. He's the best part of all this. The transfer paperwork was notarized that afternoon. Martin submitted the necessary filings to the county the following Monday. We also had documents prepared to block any future attempts to sell the home without Jonas' signature. It was all done quietly. No yelling, no fights, just steady steps. I didn't tell Derek or Tamra. Not yet. I didn't slam any doors or make big declarations. I didn't want a scene. I just filed everything and waited. Waited for the moment I knew would come. The moment they'd finally pushed too far. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't afraid. Because this time, I had a plan, and someone standing beside me who saw me not as a burden, but as a woman worth protecting. The house was mine again in spirit, and soon it would be in name. And when the time came to say the truth out loud, it wouldn't be me who'd speak first. It would be Jonas. Because sometimes the best kind of rescue isn't loud or angry. It's quiet, it's steady, and it changes everything. The night it all came together was the same night Derek made his little joke at the Christmas table. "Maybe it's time Mom gives up the house. Move somewhere easier," he said, raising his glass like it was just harmless banter. A few chuckles followed. Tamra smirked without looking up from her plate. Her parents gave those polite laughs people give when they don't want to seem uncomfortable. Jonas didn't laugh. He kept his eyes on me, and I kept mine on my napkin, folding and unfolding it under the table like it held the answers. I didn't speak. I just stood up, told everyone I needed a minute, and walked down the hall to my room. The envelope was already there. Brown, thick, labeled in my handwriting, in case they forgot. I'd been waiting for this moment, not because I wanted it, but because I knew it would come. People who believe you'll never stand up always push a little harder. Until they trip over the line they didn't think you had. When I came back into the dining room, the conversation had gone soft. Forks scraping plates. A bit of small talk. No one expected anything. I walked straight to Derek, set the envelope in front of his plate, and sat down. He blinked. "What's this?" "Go ahead," I said. "Open it." He pulled it apart like it was nothing serious. But the moment his eyes hit the top page, he froze. It was the new property deed, showing the house now legally belonged to Jonas Mack. Underneath that was a formal notice from Martin's office voiding any outstanding sale negotiations, along with a copy of the legal reassignment Jonas had signed 2 weeks earlier. And at the bottom was a letter, simple, direct, stating that any further attempt to sell or refinance the property without Jonas's signature would be considered a breach of legal trust and could result in criminal investigation. Tamra leaned in to read over his shoulder. Her eyebrows lifted. "What is this? Is this a joke?" I shook my head. "No jokes tonight. We've had enough of those." Derek started to speak. "Mom, you don't understand." I raised my hand. "I raised you in this house, Derek," I said, calm and steady. "But now it's time I stop raising people who think I'm easy to erase." He looked stunned, like he just realized I'd been awake this whole time. "I let you in when I needed help. I continued. I trusted you, and you took that as permission to take everything else." Tamra scoffed. "We did everything for you. You did everything for yourselves," I said, "and you forgot who taught you how to build anything in the first place." The room went quiet. Jonas stood then. No big speech. No anger in his voice. They'll be moving out by the end of January. He said, "That gives you 5 weeks." Derek turned to him, mouth open. "Are you serious?" Jonas nodded. "I'm serious." "You're siding with her?" "No," Jonas said. "I'm standing with her." "Big difference." Derek looked like he might say more, but Tamra grabbed his arm. "Let it go," she whispered. "We'll talk later." I stood up. "You've had the run of this house for long enough. Now you'll make room for the people who still know what home means." No yelling. No tears. I walked out of that room with my shoulders straight and my heart steady. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and just breathed. For the first time in a long while, I felt still, not the kind of still that comes from silence, but the kind that comes from peace. They didn't expect it. That was clear. They thought I'd just keep shrinking until I disappeared completely. But I didn't. I got quiet. I got clear. And then I took it back. All of it. The house. The space. The dignity. And I did it without raising my voice. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply say, "No more," and mean it. That night, I made a cup of tea and sipped it by the window. The Christmas lights blinked outside, and Jonas passed by in the hallway on his way to bed. He stopped in the doorway. "You okay, Graham?" I smiled. "I am now." He nodded. "They'll figure it out. Maybe, or maybe they won't. Either way, I'm done waiting around to be treated like I don't belong in my own life." He gave me a hug and headed off to bed. And me, I sat there with my tea and my quiet house. Not lonely, not afraid, just home. They didn't leave easily. Derek argued. Tamra cried. They said it wasn't fair, that I blindsided them, that Jonas was young and didn't understand what he was doing. But the truth was, he understood just fine. I gave them 30 days. Martin handled the official paperwork, and Jonas made it clear there'd be no wiggle room. Tamra packed fast, mostly in silence. Derek dragged it out, but they left. Jonas stayed for a while, said he wanted to help around the house, make sure everything was settled. He moved into the room that used to be his when he was little. We laughed at how small it seemed now that he was 6 feet tall. The first Saturday after they left, the house felt strange. Not empty, just different, like the air had shifted. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I sat out on the porch with my coffee. No noise, no tension, just birds in the trees and the wind moving through the pine needles. A week later, I joined the local gardening club at the senior center. I hadn't realized how much I missed digging my hands into the dirt. We planted herbs and talked about tomato pests and mulch. They were kind, simple folks with good stories. Then I went and adopted a dog, a scruffy little mutt from the rescue shelter. He'd been left behind by his last owner, they said. Nobody wanted him because he was older, set in his ways. I took one look and said, "He's coming home with me." I named him Otis. He follows me from room to room, sleeps by the front door, and barks at squirrels like it's his full-time job. Life didn't become perfect overnight, but it became mine again. I didn't go on Facebook to tell the story. I didn't post pictures or call anyone out. But word got around anyway. Neighbors dropped off small plants and cinnamon bread. A woman down the street brought me a card with a note. "You did what most of us are too scared to do. You said enough." One afternoon, I opened my phone and saw a message from Tamra. She said she hoped I was well and asked if I'd be open to talking sometime. I stared at it for a long minute. I didn't ignore her. I replied politely, told her I was okay, and wished her the same. But I didn't invite her over. Some fences don't need rebuilding. They need space. One morning, I came downstairs and found Jonas in the kitchen. He was cooking scrambled eggs and had music playing on his phone. Otis sat on his feet, waiting for crumbs. He looked over at me and grinned. "You're smiling more now." I laughed. "It's because I can breathe in my own home." He flipped the eggs and said, "Feels different, doesn't it?" I nodded. "Lighter." And it did. The house didn't creak like it used to. The rooms felt lived in, not stepped on. I moved my favorite chair back to the window in the living room, the spot where the sunlight comes through at just the right angle around 10 each morning. That's where I sit now with my tea, reading, or just watching the trees sway. A few months later, I started a little group for women in the neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just coffee and conversation every Tuesday morning. I called it Rooted Women. We talk about everything: old recipes, family messes, things we've carried too long. And we laugh. Not the fake kind. The real kind that fills a room. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been feeling invisible. And maybe that's the whole point. Sometimes you need to take your life back so that someone else finds the courage to take theirs too. So, if you've ever been made to feel like a guest in your own life, I hope you remember this. Your voice matters. Your memories matter. And it's never too late to protect your place in the world. Maybe you've been through something like I have. Maybe you're in the middle of it now. Have you ever had to quietly reclaim your space after someone tried to write you out of your own story? If you have, I'd truly love to hear what gave you the courage. And if this story spoke to you, do me a little favor. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And leave a comment. Your story might be the reminder another woman is waiting for. Until next time.